So I'm not the only one. I thought I would maybe just respond to what Tim's paper, and because it seems like everybody is talking about 3D in Everett. And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I wrote a book trying to defend wave function realism against some criticisms that people like Tim and David Wallace and others have raised. I don't consider myself to be a wave function realist, but I think that it's like a interpretation that we can give to the theory. And so I just wanted to respond to how I see how the wave function realist should respond to the kinds of concerns that Tim was raising today in his talk. So, I mean, one thing I guess I'm just not clear, it seems like he's arguing that it's just a principle about scientific method that there needs to be some kind of overlap between what a theory, between the ontology of a theory and then the kind of evidence we have for the theory. And so that's one thing that he's seeing in Bell when Bell wants a theory that has local beables. You would want a theory that's clear, since your evidence for the theory is going to consist in local beables, objects with location, some kind of entities with locations in three-dimensional space or in space-time, then for the theory to be confirmed, it needs to make predictions about those kinds of objects. So its ontology has to overlap with the evidence. But I mean, there are a couple of kind of responses that I've made to this, and I have a paper, I don't know, from I think 2015 that tries to respond to this, and I tried to respond to this in a chapter in my book also on behalf of the wave function realists. So one thing is just, in general, I don't think that's true, that there needs to be that kind of overlap. So there needs to certainly be some kind of correlations between the ontology of the theory and something, and what it makes predictions about, and our evidence. But I don't think in general it's a principle that there has to be this kind of overlap. So like, for example, if you have a kind of a theory that makes predictions about the weather, then, we can confirm that theory by looking at a thermometer and seeing the mercury at a certain point in the thermometer. But that theory doesn't necessarily have to make any predictions about thermometers. It makes predictions about temperature. And then there's a correlation between temperatures and weather. So we have a kind of evidence. It's not part of the ontology of the theory. There's just this correlation. And so I think for the wave function realist, it is true that their theory isn't formulated as a theory of, they're not understanding quantum mechanics as a theory of local beables, but they do think that they're not nihilists about local beables. They believe in them, so they don't think they're fundamental. They don't think they're the fundamental ontology of the quantum theory. But there are at least these correlations. Then that's fine. And I guess what I thought, there was like another point in. I mean, there are other things I could say, but I don't think I'll have enough time. I wanted to get to this other point because there was this other thing that you mentioned, that Tim mentioned really quickly in the talk, that was part of the motivation for Bell caring about local beables, which was, you said something like, this is like a massive paraphrase, but something like, if I want to even be able to evaluate whether I have local causality or I don't in my theory, then I need to have local beables to just even kind of ask that question and have it have an answer. I like that a lot more. I don't know, that seemed to me, that made sense. That made a lot of sense to me. I think that's a much better argument against the wave function realists, which is that it should be important, since this is supposed to be, quantum mechanics is supposed to be a physical theory, that, we can ask, like, is it compatible with relativity? Is there some kind of, non-local action on this theory? If your theory cannot if it doesn't say anything about locations in space-time, then I can't even address that question. I don't know, that I feel like that makes a lot more sense. I don't have to go through, but that seems like a separate issue. It's not an issue about what do you need to have evidence for a theory.